Good morning, everyone. I'd like to continue last week's shiur. Last week's talk dealt with the election of the President of America, which was a surprise to so many, and which teaches us the fulfillment of the verse, what it says also in the Gemara, that it says in the Gemara, if there's a good king or ruler of a superpower elected, it needs prayer, because there's a freedom of choice to each person, whatever you do. But you also need some prayer, but you need special prayer if there is a situation which affects a great part of the world, and the election of the emperor of the superpower in ancient times, and today the election of the leader of one of the great states, like almost empires in the world, who also have the ability to decide the fate of millions of people by pressing buttons. So we need prayer. Even if he's a good king, when he's elected, he might change. Often they do change as a result. That's what we've seen here in Israel. They change from one extreme to the other. And it's happened all over the world, so we need prayers. So we need to pray very much. And since the way in which Hashem guides them and takes them in His hands, it says that, as we brought from the verse, also the Gemara brings this verse to prove it, that kings, Leiv Malachim, their intent of their heart is Biad Hashem. It's like Palgemaim, like torrents of water that can either be destructive or they can be very productive. So we need strong prayers. Now I want to, with this same concept, to answer a big question. We know that Avraham Avinu, as is described in all the Midrashim and also in other books of the Tanakh, and above all in many different sources of Jewish tradition, even crystallized by the Rambam. I mean, everyone knows his father was a manufacturer of idols, and when he began to recognize that there must be one God who causes everything, so he was iconoclast. He broke down the idols. In the end, it would appear that even his father recognized his mistake to some extent. But at the beginning, when he started in this way, his father himself took him to the emperor, Nimrod, who was establishing a rebellion against Hashem. And it would appear from the verses in the Chumash that originally Nimrod, he wanted to build up a totalitarian state and keep all the major population of the world then was in his area, under his control, to get them to become one united superpower. Then they were divided in different groups, the 70 nations, but still the spirit of Nimrod was still around. And Avraham Avinu started spreading the destruction of idols and belief in one God. So he had a whole, perhaps even a public debate with him. And he's held to the concept that fire was a stronger power than any god. And in fact, he obviously used fire also for creating weapons in order to control mankind, in order to build. So that's why he threw him into a fiery furnace. And for that, in Avraham Avinu, fire didn't touch him. Enormous miracle, which is referred to, according to the sages in the passage in yesterday's Pasha, I am the God, I protect you, Magen Avraham, I'm the one who protects you, and I protected you from the fire of the furnace in which Nimrod wanted to burn you up. It didn't touch you. And it was similar with your descendants, going to be similar with Hanan, Michael, Lazari, the three, to some extent, servants, captive servants of King Nebuchadnezzar, who was similar to Nimrod. And you also thought he could burn them, couldn't burn them up. So why isn't that mentioned in the Chumash explicitly? Should have said, like it says by Noach, it says he was a saintly person. The Tamim, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, describes how step by step he reached a higher and higher level of concern to save others. And even as Hashem said, if you can save Jews from persecution from the Egyptians, and then you save one Jew who's being beaten by another Jew, you save him, and then you go and save non-Jews from non-Jews. You interfered when the daughters of Israel were being treated in a cruel fashion by the other shepherds, so you saved them. And then after this you go and save the lost sheep. So I want you to be the one who'll save my flock. And so it's built up gradually. It's described, the background too was Moshe. Moshe had been saved. Moshe Mikiv Ma'im he'd been saved from the fatal result of being thrown in the Nile, but from that he was saved. Even the daughter of Pharaoh saved him. So similarly, his whole life was to save others. He's going to come to save mankind. So why does it say this similar to Avraham? Why does Avraham come in the beginning of the Pasha? It does not even say Hashem appeared to him. It says Hashem said to Avraham. It just describes how he left Ur Kasdim, and then how he left Choron, and then together with when he took with his father, he went to Choron. His father was also doing Teshuvah to some extent. But when his father died in Choron, then he went on to didn't know quite where he was going, but went in that direction, like out to Canaan, but he wasn't quite sure, until Hashem said to him, "Oh, you've got to leave everything now." And as we understand, it wasn't a geographical exodus, because after all it says, "Go from your land, and then from place of birth, and then from the house of your father." Obviously, a person leaves the house of his father first, and then the town where he was born and where he lived, and then his country. But he refers to the influence. Leave all those influences and go to the land. In fact, the land Asher Areka, really grammatically, if it's the land which I'm going to show you, it should be Ar'elecha. Ar'eka means the land where I will demonstrate who you are. I'll develop your inner potential to become an enormous power. That's why Rashi says, "I go into the land Asher Ar'eka." It's in order to make Lodia Tivacha Ba'olam, in order to make your nature known in the world. From the land of Canaan, you'll have an easier situation, because there's no police force that's going to fight. You've got more free activity, but there you won't have to fight with the government. You just got to use your influence of love. And through the influence of love, you'll be able to bring so many. At Anevesuv Haran, you started working in Haran when you left Mesopotamia, and you came to Haran, which is quite far removed from Ur Kasdim. There, you'll be able to influence people, and there won't be police after you, and there won't be a government after you, and you have to do it in a kind way. And that way you'll attract people. Because the others that he managed to take away from idolatry. I mean, they were then put into prison as well, so he didn't achieve very much, and then they couldn't live out their lives in the manner of moral monotheism, but that he was able to do here. Now, so all the commentators ask the question, why does it begin in chapter 12, Lech Lecha? You've got to go your own particular way, you've got to keep close to my commandments in every way. Even you've got to do chesed, even in a society which is anti-chesed. You've got to spread the knowledge of the one God who causes all existence through his power of chesed. So it's not going to be easy, but it doesn't describe its background at all. So this question raised by the Ramban and many other commentators. So the Maharal of Prague, and I'm going to develop his thought on the basis of the last talk I gave. That Hashem, in his relationship to the world, we know that he has the power to interfere with freedom. And the classic example for that is the Exodus from Egypt, where Hashem demonstrated that Paro is really the epitome of a superpower over the major center of civilization, which Egypt was at that time, who thought that he was God. And he tried to get the people to worship him. And he identified himself with the Nile, because the Nile brought all blessing. So he said, in fact, it says in the book of Yechezkel, the Paro declared, I made myself, and I am the Nile. That's why he went to the Nile every morning, because he regarded the biggest power in Egypt was the power of irrigation of the Nile. The Nile made Egypt a center. Without the Nile, Egypt would have been a barren desert, like the rest of, like a great part of North Africa. Because of the Nile, so he thought he identifies himself with these real sources. Just like today, we could even say some of the superpowers, they identify themselves with the oil that they have. I am the superpower, says the tyrant of Iran, because I've got all the oil. They need me, so I can make deals with everybody. They think they're superpower. So this sort of concept is like the
indulgence,
the self-worship.
Yeah.
The self-worship becomes strong. If this is what happens also with people who reach a high level of position. Then you go and analyze their language. It was I said this, and I do this, and I do this. All the time they mention themselves, because they're taken up in their own personality. That's also why they think they can change, they can do whatever they want. So then Hashem sometimes shows, no, you can't, put this limit on them. So the same applies also for the good. Because in the morning, how do we describe every morning? It's taken from the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. In the morning we describe the choice of Avraham Avinu. Normally we would say, surely Avraham Avinu was so great because he chose Hashem. But what do we say in the morning? Atu Elokim, you are the God, Asher Bochatu B'Avram. You chose Avram. What's it Kasdim? You took him out from the fire, the Chaldeans. Or some say, well, Kasdim just means, even more literally, Midrashically means the fire in which he was burnt up. But literally, when we analyze the writings of the ancient Babylonians, Ur Kasdim meant the city of the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans were great masters of astronomy and also of astrology. And many of them worshipped the stars. And they had great wise men who really had a great knowledge of astronomy. And they were known as such in all ancient time. They found all ancient sources. And Ur is the ancient phrase in the ancient Babylonian for city. So it's the city of the Chaldeans, the center. The center of the empire was in Ur. So their civilization was based upon the concept that they worshipped the stars, and they thought that the stars are the ones that have the basic influence on the world. That's also why Nimrod wanted to take hold of the stars. He said, I want to put a bigger tower that would reach outside the atmosphere of the earth. From there they could float to some of the planets, and then from the planets they'd be able to control the world. And they would be able to stop the world even from having a further Mabul, a further deluge of any sort. And that was their Nimrod's concept, which has been, as I mentioned in previous talk, is being to some extent reincarnated in the communist regime to take over the world. Similar manner. So that doesn't only apply for bad things, it applies also for good things. And that's why it says, not Avraham, it's true Avraham chose Hashem, but even more so, Hashem chose Avraham. And after all, you can see it. The fact that he was able to go in the fiery furnace and not be touched, that wasn't his merit. It was Hashem who said, I have to do it. I have to take this person who at least has the ability to accept the truth. I've got to make him a world power, a power that will change the world. Because like this, if we go right back, we can even look at as follows. Hashem, if you look at this Bereshis, Hashem created Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, to make this globe into a Garden of Eden. But since they sinned, they were driven out. So you can say Gan Eden was driven out from the experience of mankind. It's still there potentially, and it'll come again in times of Mashiach, but meanwhile it's disappeared. And what happened afterwards, even when it disappeared, Hashem said, well, now you've got some of the poison of evil inside you, and you've got to choose good against evil. And that way you'll be able to gradually, maybe, if the goodness you do will become stronger than evil, you'll be able to get back the Gan Eden. But unfortunately, Hakina, Taiva, Kavod, Mutsin, Tatam min ha'olam. What happened? So Cain killed Heva, that's Kina, jealousy, it's murder. And then, in time of Enos, they started Ozucha, Likro b'Shem Hashem. They started, it's all mentioned in Bereshis, they started worshipping idols instead of the name of Hashem, the ultimate cause of all existence. That's Avodah Zorah. And then at the end of Pasuk Bereshis it says that there was a beginning of enormous immorality and perversions. And the strong, they used to rape and manipulate the weak, both socially as well as sexually. So that's Gila Arayot. The three things that take a person away from the world. So Hashem said at the end of Pasuk Bereshit, I'm sorry that I created a human being. I've got to give up the world. Mankind's losing its divine image. Can't go on this way. Except there was one person, Noach. And Noach was a good person and innocent. He died his best. And he found favor in the eyes of Hashem. Also means Hashem said, well, I'll have to support Noach, otherwise there'll be no human race left. Let's see if we can rebuild society through this one man with his family. So he put him in the ark, which was immune and was strongly protected against the poison of the environment, the pollution of the environment, both the physical pollution and the moral pollution. And when he came out, so he was the one who was supposed to now cause the survival of the brave new world. And to some extent he succeeded, but not entirely, because he had three sons. But his son Shem and Eva, they continued to teach the Noachide code. So Hashem said, I'll have to go and, although Adam received already the basic Noachide code, I'll have to renew it now for Noach and all his descendants. That's for all human beings there, B'nai Noach. But again, there was a problem, even after the deluge. The problem was that after the deluge came Nimrod, the rebellion against God. But now the nation had already been divided, and Hashem, otherwise he planned it. How am I going to bring mankind to recognize my moral leadership of the world? And they will choose virtue, which is life, instead of vice, which is death. Who can do it? An individual is too difficult. Even Noah was an individual, but he couldn't do it for the whole world. For part of the world, okay, that Shem continued a little bit, but that was a passive Shem, a passive establishment of the name of Hashem in this world. And it was too weak to oppose the big powers who were still basing themselves, even though the nations were divided, but they still believed in human power against divine power. So therefore Hashem said, Ata bachata bi Avraham. Hashem chose Avraham, I've got to help. How did he help him? This miracle of him being saved, that wasn't really the act of Avraham, that was the act of Hashem. Hashem said, God said, I'll have to keep him alive under all circumstances, and here in Mesopotamia, in Ur of Chaldees, his influence will be cut off, because here there's still the regime of those who believe in human power against divine power, and therefore I'm asking him to go to a land where there's also immorality, and where there's also anti-chesed. But maybe if I'm going to put Avraham there, I'm going to give him assistance by parenting from there, because that's the fulcrum of 3 continents, and from that place was already, some said, designated in creation, that is one of the most important central places where 3 continents meet, and from there, maybe, there's also a holy place of the city of Yerushalayim. From there, holiness will spread ultimately the whole world. And for that, I need Avram. Therefore, the parsha begins, here really begins the message for Am Yisrael, and Am Yisrael is necessary for the whole world. Now this goes back to, remember my first year in this series was on the first Rashi, which goes back to the sages, where it says, why was it necessary to begin the Torah with description of creation and then of what happened with the human race? It could have started with Achodesh Elachem, because Torah is to tell you what to do. What's the plan of life? The plan of life which is given to the people of Israel. And in fact, the Torah, the totality of the Torah, at the end of the Torah, is referred to as Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov. The Torah, the totality of Torah, with all its 613 mitzvot, is an inheritance for whom? For Yaakov, to establish it in life. So why do we need all these episodes to be related to us? But the answer is like this. Rashi says, when the nations of the world say, why do you take Eretz Israel? As we explained, it applies to today. Today, there's never been a time when the nations of the world have accused Am Yisrael to be robbers and occupiers. There's never been a time in the history of mankind where this has been as strong as today. So what do we answer them? So we answer them, Hashem created the world and He gave over each land to different groups, and He gave over Eretz Israel, Lasher Yashar Beinav, the one that is Yashar in its eyes. So what I explained was Yashar is the name which is given to the book of Bereshit. It's called Sefer Yashar. In the later books of the Bible, twice we find Sefer Yashar, which Sefer Yashar is Bereshit. It's a book of how to be upright for all human beings. But through whom do you learn it? Through Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You learn what it means, Yashar. Yashar means to go on the right path, and in which there are a lot of tests and difficulties. How can you stay on the right path? This is shown by the people of Israel, who have to establish it in the land of Israel. Because that's the principle of Yashar Beinav Ta'aseh. And this explains many things, both in Bereshit and all the episodes, which as is known in the whole world, that you want to get children, or even older people, to have some form of values in establishing a family life or social life. everyone agrees from all sides, Genesis, the episodes of Genesis are an extremely strong power in achieving this. I mean, there's so many, I can say, the British men literature, there's Goethe, there's a whole length on it, one of the greatest geniuses of German, European literature, and French literature. They all say the stories of Genesis are the best stories to bring to the young, because it establishes in the family how you've got to remove hatred and develop love and respect, and how to establish with siblings who often are at loggerheads with one another, how you've got to establish ways to bring them to inclusion, even in the most difficult circumstances. So these are concepts that are described here at length. Also how to prepare for marriage, many things. So this was Hayashar Be'enav, and here Hashem, when he saw Avraham Avinu, he recognized him the potential to develop it. Therefore it begins the first time, it wasn't even the vision of Hashem. He didn't see him. He didn't, because Vayer Alav Hashem means there was a certain prophetic appearance. There was no prophetic appearance, just a message. He got the message, he heard it. Hashem said to him, you've got to go away from the things you've been accustomed to, you've got to change. If you change, then you are going to become the source of blessing for everybody. How do you have to say, but it says first, but it's really a contradiction. Go away from what you've been taught from the values of the country in which you live. What you've been taught, the values of the city life, the highly civilized technology of the Mesopotamia, and even what you were taught in your home, where there were idolaters. You have to forget all this, and you've got to change your life. And although the world around you is, meanwhile, ignorant of it, but through you they'll all be blessed. But there was a contradiction, because it says, those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. That means, what about those who curse you? That some nations will curse you. As we find today, that some nations, that Israel is fine. The other nations, they find every means to curse the people of Israel. So what, they're also going to be blessed through you. What's going to happen to them? Because they just disappear. So if someone say, yeah, they'll disappear. All those who curse you will disappear. There'll only be people left who will bless you. But the others say, no. Even those who curse you will also say about their children, Rashi brings this, I want my children to be like Avraham Avinu. I want them to be like him. Even the ones who curse you will say it. So they will be blessed through you. Even they themselves can't live up to it, but they'll tell their children to live up to it. So this is another example where Hashem interferes. And that's why he interferes in certain circumstances with the non-Jewish superpower leaders, and he also interferes with some Jewish leaders, that he changes them to become the great saints, and as a result they bring blessing to everybody. They're given enormous help in order to be able to change the world. As for example happened to David HaMelech. He went through terrible, terrible troubles. But Hashem chose him. So it says he was a chosen king. Not like Shaul. Shaul was a king that they requested, and people requested very much. But the one who was ultimately chosen was David HaMelech. Then Shlomo HaMelech was chosen. He even had this dream when he was age 14. He had the dream. Something in age 12, he had the dream. How, what you ask for most? He said, I want to have more understanding, to be able to judge everyone correctly, to fulfill the mitzvah of Yashar. So Hashem said, because you asked for that, I'm giving you all blessings. You're being great. So also Hashem helped him beyond his power of choice. So this teaches us a person who comes into a position of great leadership, where the whole country, and sometimes Shlomo Melech also, a great part of the world depends on him, Hashem will act beyond the freedom of choice of the person, and he'll do much more. And that's why the passage introduced with Lech Lecha. This answers the question. I'm developing it's written in the Maral more or less what I'm saying, but I think we can understand it better by joining it together to the great the evil of the big potentates. What happens to them is directed by Hashem. They are ultimately puppets whose fate is controlled. Perhaps not. They're not able to. Through their own freedom of will, they would be able to annihilate all mankind, but Hashem doesn't allow it to happen. And similarly, also when He needs saints, the power of saintliness on a high level, He'll also interfere. He'll go beyond the person's power of freedom. So, you have any questions on this?
I have one. Why is it when God speaks to Noah, build an ark, he builds an ark, he takes it right away, and when he speaks to Abraham, he says to Abraham, go out of your land, Lech Lecha. But when it comes to Moses, he talks to Moses, he sees the burning bush. Moses says, oh no, I can't do it, I don't know how to talk properly, they won't believe me. He thinks of all these excuses not to go. Why is that? Because Moses was on a higher level than those two. So why is that?
Because you can understand it by a statement made further on in the Chumash, which says that Moses was the most humble of all men. And really that's why Hashem chose him, and he argued with him, till he himself would recognize that he is really, everything that he has comes from Hashem, and he's got to recognize that he has to do it against his nature. This part of the whole concept which I spoke about is it was against the nature of Moshe to be a leader. He said, I'm not a leader, I don't want to be a leader. I can't speak. I mean, when I came to once in the shul, I said it, the synagogue, I said, Moses would never have been accepted as a rabbi in any part of these synagogues, in any position in the synagogues, not only where I was, but all over the world, because he couldn't speak properly. And when Hashem said, that's just the person I need, one who can't speak, then people recognize if he does speak, it's not from him, it's from me. That was behind it. Got to know, people have to know that the Pentateuch was not composed by Moses, it was composed by Hashem. Moses was just his messenger. He said, I'll be what's called Eved Hashem, I'm just Hashem's servant. Hashem asked me to do it, I can't refuse. Hashem tells me something, I have to say it. There's only very rare points at which Moshe came out with his own inner personality. It was a shliach of Hashem. That's why I'm saying this goes both ways. It's like here Avram. Avram was easier because Avram had an innate potential to speak up and even to battle for Hashem. Therefore he says, I don't want you so much to fight battles, I want you to attract people through the power of chesed. So that was Avraham. But Moshe was a different situation. He tried always to save others at the risk even to his own life. What happened? He had to run away from Egypt because the Pharaoh wanted to kill him. So he had to. He hoped he wouldn't have leadership, but Hashem forced him, more or less. So now I want to go on with something quite remarkable to demonstrate how yesterday's Parsha is being fulfilled today. So I'll just start on this as follows. That if going right back to the beginning, we say we need the whole book of Genesis and the first part of the book of Exodus has to be written to demonstrate how Hashem chose the people of Israel and the land of Israel. So therefore, one of the things we're shown, don't think, like it says, for example, it's very important, if you want to answer the nations of the world, don't say, like it says, I'll tell you, unfortunately, in the scroll of independence, which was declared on the origin of the state of Israel. I don't know if you know the first line, but the first line is a complete falsification. And that's really the whole trouble we're facing today in Israel. The first line of Megillat Atzmaut is that Be'eretz Israel Kam Ha'am HaYudi. That goes on describing it. In Eretz Israel, the Jewish people were established. Yeah? Jewish people were established in the land of Israel. Therefore go on now, it belongs to us. Yeah? Now, this is a complete falsification, and even they realized it. Just not true. Just like today, unfortunately, we have distortions of history being developed in extreme manner by the Muslims, by some of the Muslims. I mean, it's just stupidity how far they go. But unfortunately, we've made them the same mistake. How can we say that in the land of Israel, the people of Israel were established? I mean, nearly all those who signed on that declaration, how they could sign on it, is also a bit of a question. How could they sign on it? Because denying what it says explicitly in the Bible. The Bible says, in Rashi, go back to the first Rashi, it's quite true that the land of Israel was intended for the people of Israel. But the people of Israel, as a people, we were already referred to as the people in Egypt. It's quite true that when the forefathers were in the land of Canaan, they were told, your seed will have the land of Israel. And when they said your seed, they always said, you also. Because the forefathers are really the roots, the seeds. But we weren't a people yet. We only became a people with the 70 souls of Yaakov when they went down, and this goes all together with the first Rashi, the 70 souls of the people of Israel called Nefesh, one soul, because they were united as a family, although they were very different, one from the other. The forefathers were very different, and all the descendants, in fact you can say, the common factor of the Jewish family as it started, it goes on till today, yes, the one family of the Jewish people, is that all members of the family are individualists. Nearly all the members have different points of view. But they can unite. They've got to work together. And that's already mentioned in the blessings which Yaakov Avinu gave to his sons. He said, he knew each one was different. They said, but God, we were united. United in being the people of Hashem, and united in the land of Israel. But it took a long time. Where did it start? In Egypt, in the Galut. It started through suffering. They had to suffer, because without suffering, they would not learn to have sympathy for those who suffer. You've got to feel it yourself. It says constantly the Chumash. It's like, a famous story of different people. The person he's collecting money to provide warm clothing and provide heating for poor people who don't have it. So it goes in the house, it's the middle of the winter, and it's very cold outside, there might be a hailstorm or something. So it goes and knocks on the door of a very rich man, and the rich man says, look, it's cold, come inside. No, he says, I can't come inside, can't come. I'm staying here in the cold. but please give me something for the poor people of God. Well, why do you come inside? Inside, I'll give you money. It's cold for me as well. So he's standing at the door's open. He wants to close it, if you're not coming or closing the door, I said, no, keep it open. I want you to feel the cold. If you don't feel the cold yourself, you won't want to give. You'll say, if you forget about the poor people, you've got to feel it yourself. And that's it. It says constantly in the Chumash, you were slaves in Egypt. You've got to remember, never forget the enslavement in Egypt. Because if you think, and the enslavement in Egypt continues as long as we don't have enough sympathy. We become enslaved by the nations. Well, why do we have to go to work camps, working ourselves to death and so on? Because we don't have enough sympathy for those who are slaves. We don't have sympathy for those who are suffering. The Jew has to be based on chesed. And in order to do that, he's got to go in galut. Therefore, the people of Hashem, the people of chesed, they first have to go through galut, yador. And whom is that mentioned? In this week's passage, it's mentioned Avraham Avinu before the people who were there. And even Avraham asked, how do I know that I'm going to inherit this land? Because meanwhile, I've got no children. How can I inherit? Impossible. So some you're going to inherit the land. But meanwhile, before they inherit the land, they've got to be persecuted by the Egyptians. Otherwise, they can't inherit the land. The people of Israel is born in suffering. Because we have to learn how to have sympathy for those who are suffering. And we have, that's a very important lesson for today. We have one of the worst records with regard to poverty in the land. How can we allow that? We've got to get the whole country together, do more chesed. Make sure that there aren't poor people starving. There's not enough done. There are plenty of people starving today in Israel. And it's marvelous what they do in the hospitals. That's a fantastic aspect of chesed, which the Jewish people in totality fulfill. So they keep on, even if there's any suffering elsewhere, they constantly have men of medicine, others, they volunteer. Many people volunteer. Doctors volunteer. Teams of nurses they send in case people, and even what they do in the hospitals. So those who want to kill us, and nevertheless, if they're wounded, then we treat them in our hospitals. Now, some of the hospitals are flooded with people who belong to the PLO and others. It's such a situation. But we are a nation of chesed. But you've got to make sure there are no people who have to go and, I know no one, there's a girl, my wife's in touch with, where did she live? She couldn't find anywhere to live, didn't have any money or nothing. So she's in some small little hole in a camp, in a parking lot. She found something where she get some hole where she can stay. I mean, and people go around the dustbins to take out scraps of food and so on. We've got to change that situation. We were much more socially minded at the beginning of the state than exists today. So we have to train. We have to train all the younger generation also to help to do more chesed. It's very important. But not only that, when did we really become a people? We became a people when we were able to, we learnt our lesson. We escaped Egypt, where they want to destroy us. We came to the desert. But then in the desert we received the Torah. Why not in the land of Israel? It's the Torah that built up as a holy nation. Without the sayings of the Decalogue and fulfilling it, that was to be the covenant with Hashem. Before the covenant with the land. Because Hashem wants us to incorporate a whole social life on a different level with faith in Hashem and following the Yashar. To become Yashar, you've got to have a balance also in life. Each person's got to feel got a responsibility, each person given special talents. You ought to create a balance, just like a person can only walk forwards in life if he's got a correct balance. If he loses his balance, then he can't walk forward, can't make progress. He just falls one side, the other side. So if you want to make forward, you've got to learn how to balance the two sides of your character. How to make the Yetzer Hara It's subservient to the Yetzer HaTov. And that's what you can only do through the Torah. Therefore the Torah is given to Am Yisrael. And we're supposed to get it straight afterwards. We weren't ready yet, so we had to wait for the next generation. And then, that's why it says, Sefer Devarim, it says all the time, you've got to do Hayashar B'nei Hashem. And from where do you learn Yashar? From Bereshis. Because that's what the Avot had to learn it as well. And they followed the way of Yashar. They're called, when Bilam, he prayed, he said to Hashem, Tamot nafshi mot yesharim. Who are the Yesharim? Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The people of Israel, he knows that when they die, their whole life has been Yashar, they go Yashar also into the spiritual Gan Eden. So this is what is emphasized, that in that great vision given to Avraham, some say it was the first real vision, called the Brit Bein HaBetarim, the covenant between the pieces. And just say this, that covenant between the pieces, it's most significant today, because we'll go into it more thoroughly, but I can demonstrate from two angles that it's never applied in a literal fashion so clearly as today. Because by the Brit Bein HaBetarim it says, because Avraham Avinu and the other Avot, they're going to follow the upright path, in the end, the seed of Avraham will inherit the whole of the Middle East. How is described there. At the end of the Parsha, we have the Brit Milah, when Avraham took Brit Milah, and Yishmael, or in between, there's the passage of the birth of Ishmael, and there it says, to your seed, to Avraham, your seed after you, I'll give you the land of Canaan. It does not say from the river of Egypt to the river of Paras, which means most of the Middle East. It doesn't say that. Why not? Because it says, the sages say, it's going to come a time. The Brit Bein HaBetarim, which is called also the Holocaust, because the last verse, what does it speak about? What did he see in that vision? He saw a smoking oven and a pillar of fire. The smoking oven, the sages say, is the persecution by the nations of the world. It's a metaphor. And when was it transformed from a metaphor to reality? You tell me. When? It became a reality, the smoking oven. What's the smoking oven?
The nations.
The crematorium.
No.
The gas chambers. Then obviously burning up the bodies. Because that is the worst form of persecution in the world that's ever been known. The Holocaust. So on that day Hashem made a covenant. He's going to give the whole of the Middle East to the seed of Avraham. It's before Ishmael came on the scene. It's given. Why? Because the seed of Avraham, the first seed, was Ishmael. And the Ramban said, it's shown also in the prophets, when the Mashiach will come, the first nations that will do teshuvah, it's also hinted at how to understand Bereshis. I would say, Bereshis or Masya Avot Ziman Labanim. Whatever happened to the forefathers is guidance might happen in the future. The first ones, Mashiach comes, who are going to recognize the truth of the God of Israel, and they'll follow the God of Israel, are the Muslims. And then the Middle East, the Middle East Muslims will all accept, as it says in the other prophets, it says in the United Nations, they'll all want to learn the correct path of the Noahide Code from the people of Israel. But the Brit Milah, specific Brit Milah, is only for the people of Israel. And that was only given the land of Canaan. The land, as says Yechezkel says in the future third temple, the land of Israel will be the land of Canaan. It'll stop at the Nile even. It doesn't include Transjordan if you look. That's the real Eretz Israel, is the West Bank, not the other side, not Transjordan. Transjordan was only added on the conquest of Ammon and Moab, for the two and a half tribes, they were given it, but they were the first ones to go into exile and get lost. Because it's not really the full Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. But the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael for the future, Beit HaMikdash will be recognized by all the nations ultimately. The first ones will be the Muslims, because they believe in one God. Avoid they go into distortions in the name of the one God. They're doing the worst murders and suicides. So this is part of what we're experiencing today. And we'll continue with this Mitzvah Shem next year. Was there any questions next year? Oh, shoot.
I believe there's 37 times in Torah that we must be kind to strangers. So, and Shabbos only 7 times. So maybe Satmar's Shita is based on that, maybe.